Appalling Lies and Inspirational Missives from Anglesey. By William Kerwin. Part 5. Article 41. A discussion overheard between sales sentinels in the old Marks and Spencer shop in Llandudno on New Year sales, 2017. Titled, "It's only a bargain if you've got somewhere to keep it." And their conversation went. Try telling my cousin that. Over the years, it's proved to be a hopeless task pointing out to her that she can only wear so many clothes in a single lifetime, and that we don't have all that many cocktail parties on Anglesey for all her little black dresses. I pride myself that if a visitor were to visit my home, that he or she would never know what I do for a living. That's exactly how I want it. Work is a place to tolerate. My home is where I live, and where I am definitely elsewhere. For my cousin, bargains are her elsewhere, while she decides about her future. Her elsewhere is my nightmare, and my elsewhere is her nightmare, because I have no storage. Apparently, I do that on purpose. And it's all an act of spite on my part. I consider myself guilty as charged. I have finally become that individual in college we all used to tease for always wearing a sky blue t-shirt, jeans and trainers. He had 7 identical t-shirts and 7 pairs of jeans. I now mostly wear black jeans, suede boots and a black t-shirt. It's really all I choose to have in my wardrobe to reinforce the elsewhere sense of being. At last, I am my own hero. I am further limited in my wardrobe, because the men's sections in charity shops seem to only specialize in clothing for XXL size lumberjacks. Who would have thought we had that many trees? Thankfully, I have no room in my wardrobe for anything from the tall dead dude section of charity shops, because I am average. Size 8 in shoe, and the recently departed are almost always size 10 and above. We are a retail desert of dead male giants on Anglesey. A recent light argument proved futile. Apparently, there was no logic in my argument that her purchase of storage boxes merely meant filling them and finding somewhere to put them. Her home is smaller on the inside than the outside, thus proving that physics is irrelevant to shopping. Article 42. From Nigel Planter. Preface to his leaflet of seasonal greetings, Christmas, to the students at his Yoga Meditation and Pilates Center in Pengorfuas for Amlok 2010. Titled, I'm wearing the wrong shoes. Nigel is regarded as out there. Way out there, beyond where rational people consider way out there. If you get out there, he continues to be way out there. His leaflet reads, Baba Ram Das once gave a talk, describing how his guru had once rushed into the hut in which he was staying in the Himalayas, and exclaimed, "When you wear shoes of leather, your whole world is covered in leather." It actually took me a while to realize what the guru had said, and it is pertinent in a very powerful way to how we live our lives today. Because a happy life depends on what shoes you are wearing, any and every day. On the days that I am wearing the wrong shoes, my glass is only half full, I may perceive slight everywhere, and I only see evidence that confirms my inadequacy. My shoes are the multimodal lens through which I seek salience, as the psychologists have it. If I were a racist, I would choose to view anyone outside my mutually supporting group as dirty, smelly, lazy or predatorial. If I were a bigot, then I would be deaf to alternative opinions, and only see supporting evidence wherever, and however I move through the world. So instead of thinking shoes, think filter. Cognitive filter even. I admit to being a man of my time. I was on that transition between old-fashioned paternalism and female emancipation. I received my first lesson in feminism when a girlfriend remained seated at the table after we had eaten the meal she had cooked. I was being tested. Thankfully, I passed, albeit after an odd silence. You sit there, and I'll wash up. These silences fashion those shoes. And they are constantly being refashioned. Apart from when I'm very angry, I am generally aware of the shoes I'm wearing, although I've been corrected many times on my journey to here. Some of us wish to be better people, but I think we need the company and assistance of good foot doctors. It is the pair of shoes contrived for us to fit into that undermines the plan that our unconscious has in store for us. It's been a long time since I meditated on this, and I put this down to being time poor. Yet memories of experiences remind me of a loud and gentle joviality and yearning for more of the same. We frequently traverse life in fear, and we tend to do that in shoes of our own choosing. Worse, the shoes chosen by others. Sometimes life can be difficult, and we don't always remember where we parked our best shoes. I reflected on my own poor experiences when I became aware of the inferior quality of my own shoes. So in my beleaguered wisdom, I decided that I must go looking for a new pair, a pair that would be appropriate to dancing, gardening, cooking and loving. Just one single pair of shoes to return me to these places. I also needed a pair for going looking at the world again, the one on my emotional doorstep I'd forgotten about. I also needed a pair of shoes for sleeping and resting properly, a pair for laughing, and a pair for swimming. I don't really believe in determinism. I only believe in correct shoes I must find and look after. I still attribute success to good fortune of the linear and not spontaneous kind. We learn to work hard because those around us work hard, and it is that hard work supported by a sound logic, again learned, that yields favorable outcomes. Thus, by being in the middle of hard-working committed people, we learn what we need to do. We know which shoes to wear because others have shown us. A friend who lived and worked in Portugal for a great many years, now tells me that one of the first thing Portuguese men do on meeting you, and this is surely a terrible generalization and slur, is to look at your shoes. Are they plain or stylish, expensive or poor? They look at the shoes and either invite you in, or they don't. Another friend sells second-hand cars, and the prices he charges varies upwards according to the quality of pair of shoes you are wearing. Expensive shoes, or simply wearing shoes appropriate to your ambition, open doors you wish to go through. You may inadvertently be wearing shoes that open the wrong doors. Do you go through? Shoes tell you to which group you belong. Therefore, it is well worth considering a question such as, what shoes am I wearing? Rather than, what's it all about? Because what shoes I am wearing is what it is all about at the end of the day. Another side note. An observation made by Mr. Gerald Butler, former member of the Bodford Rugby Club on a competitive rugby tour to Dublin in 2011. The meaning of life is to give life meaning. The profound statement was a drunken response to a question asked by his captain. Really? What is the meaning of life? To which Mr. Butler spontaneously responded. The meaning of life is to give life meaning. Thankfully, it was noted on a beer mat and presented to him next day. Therefore, the philosophy of life is no more complicated than that. You may now begin. Article 43. From Chuck McDurk, Anglesey surf poet. Preface to his 1986 book, Patience and Ecstasy in Surfing Probability. Titled, When You're Surfing the Zeitgeist, You Pick Up a Few Passengers, Bad Habits. The preface reads, An untethered ley line had clearly just passed through the room, tarrying a while to permit order to wreak an unexpected chaos. A dead cat had turned suddenly when no one had asked it to. The culture of the office changed from calm concentration on solving the crisis of strangers, to confusion as the boss entered. All electrical equipment began to misbehave, as if all instrumentation decided to simultaneously assume a recalcitrant personality and collectively vote overwhelmingly for disorder. Keep pressing the same button as if that effort will solve a problem. As they say in Welsh rugby, if route 1 fails, try route 1. The builders renovating the exterior of the house stopped work and stared at me in amazement. I negotiated the surfboard into the passenger side of the car, and wrapped a towel around the end against the rear window. It was a well-practiced routine for going surfing. The ground was frozen solid and the air stung the tired lungs of the laborers struggling to fit plastic double-glazed windows wearing heavy mittens. It's a sound testimony to their skill that none have fallen out. Yet. Even though they continue to distort my reflection in the fiercest autumn gales. Here was this idiot going surfing 3 weeks after the coldest Christmases in decades. Of course, I knew that the sea was warmer than the land, and in my thick wetsuit, cap, rubber shoes and gloves, I would soon warm up without needing to pee. Although that occasionally helped for a few brief seconds. I was an occasional solo surfer, and preferred the privacy of an empty winter bay for my dreadful early surfing attempts. It was no wonder I felt comfortable surfing in deepest winter in those days because my flapping and climbing back on the board kept me warm. In fact, I used to sweat in ambient air temperature below zero. I was a solo surfer occasionally given to panic, but such was my embarrassment that I preferred deepest winter to summer days with too many rescuers on hand and plenty of cameras to record. Training in isolation is akin to writing. No one will know of your vainglorious attempts at gathering words around an idea until you foolishly decide to publish. Diffidence as a writer, as with the surfing, and an intense dislike of an audience to failure, predisposed me to not venture out in my own name. In the middle of a society of conceit and shamelessness, my shyness has grown from too many opportunities to be embarrassed. People tend to project an expectation of performance onto you and see only what they wish to Success becomes failure and failure success, no matter the quality of the performance. I surf my own zeitgeist, my own psychological construct in anticipation and projection from this point to failure. I question whether there is any value in publicizing my own endeavors, and feel constrained toward inertia by the criticism I would surely receive. And yet, others push themselves to the front of the crowd, ignorant of their lack of talent and impervious to criticism while bathing in their own pathological narcissism. The zeitgeist is our own perception of reality contaminated by our own thinking, where there are no straight lines from idea to outcome. But there are no straight lines. The only straight lines are in lotteries where the odds are always 100%. 100% that you will win, or 100% that you won't. Unlike lotteries, the odds of moving from idea to outcome are far greater, no matter how tortuous we make that personal zeitgeist to surf. Fear or cowardice? Most of us possess the tools for success, but it is the perseverance that is lacking. And what is perseverance, other than a practice scaled up increment upon increment, and an accretion of confidence, which is all that confidence is? Idea, execute, and outcome. And there are no outcomes that are negative, for all are instruments for straightening the line that will always remain crooked although perceived through hope and endeavor as a probable route. The wave follows its own theory of mathematical certainty in that it will rise, and its curl can be calculated reasonably with a practiced eye. One may see certainty that it is either a wave worth committing to and paddling for or allowing it to pass underneath and rise to see what is coming next. Surfing is mostly an exercise in patience, and while you cannot design a wave's perfect arrival and power, you can at least decide that it is worth a go. The zeitgeist is not only a culture enjoyed in passing, but a wave construed of events and evolving tastes, which few are able to view as they only look to see what is present rather than what is imminent. The signs are always there to see, a discernible straightness within a crooked line or lines. Article 44. Chuck McDurk, Anglesey surf poet. Address on winning the 1986 North Wales Surfing Challenge in Rawsnaga. Titled, What if God's creation were just an experiment to see if humans could live in harmony? I am not a determinist. And neither do I believe in fate. I only believe in hard work, and the potential for human beings to be good and decent. I also believe in luck, though not as a superstitious notion, but as a blind mathematical probability. Many people arrive at a nexus of good fortune but then do not have the awareness of themselves, opportunity and circumstance to take advantage of what is revealed to them. I tend to incline my belief toward accepting that cruelty and horrors do occur in the world, and do not blame God for not intervening. Blind faith in a divine entity places too much responsibility elsewhere, and outside of ourselves. The cruelty in the world only makes sense to me if we accept that its resolution depends on people working to stop it happening in the first place. It is not God's role. Don't look to God because God has placed that responsibility firmly at our door and is expecting us to do something about it. We're just not making a good enough job of sorting things out. The experiment is failing. We are failing to stop evil growing because it seems as if we regard it as someone else's job. Our non-intervention excites those who laugh at our moral cowardice. Article 45. From a diary entry in October 1943, written by Reverend Henry Jenkins, of Carmel, Anglesey. Titled, You will only believe in reincarnation when you hear yourself talking with your dead father's voice, and acting with your mother's compassion. The Reverend's diary entry reads as follows. When my father was in his mid-70s he tapped his temple and told me, "It's still 17 in here, you know." You only had to see that kindly mischievous glint in his eye to know he was still possessed of a young person's outlook and humor. I am a long way from my 70s, yet I understand fully what he meant, and it is an epiphany, in retrospect, because I know that I have become my father in many ways. The body might be aging, but the blood still courses with a passion, and dreams have not yet succumbed to the futility that accompanies many a person of my age. I still believe that some of my dreams remain achievable, and so I persevere, looking after those we love to the best of our ability, endeavoring to make the world a better place for our children and grandchildren, and teaching them to keep good company and to understand people, and how they think. We can prepare our children to understand the world as it is revealed to them, and most importantly, teach them that objectivity and wonder are excellent companions, that a philosophy learned from our own life experiences is worth considering when it comes to knowing who the bad men and women are, because they always give themselves away in the end. My brother let me use his house for a Christmas lunch, and I cleaned up afterwards, slightly more than he manages, and he wrote to me to say, "Thank you, sir." You are welcome anytime. To which I responded, that's what Dad used to say, I'm sure. My brother replied, it is, isn't it? Who'd have thought it was in there? So, phrases, values and beliefs are transmitted down from one generation to the next, and although the source may be forgotten, the philosophy is not. We have seen conflicts and hatreds rekindled, centuries after injuries were originally perceived to have been sustained by communities and ethnic groups. These hatreds manifest themselves as violence against lifelong friends and neighbors. Centuries pass, and still the message passed down retains its visceral aspect. In times of trouble, it is important to have someone to hate and to blame. To be wise is to be circumspect in how you talk to your children, and how you act toward others. Before you earn respect of others, you must be the child of your respected father and mother. For a long time, you will have no name other than Will's son or Mary's boy. Only when they recognize your parents in your voice and manner will they use your name. We stand on the shoulders of both giants and fools, and must choose which message to share. In so doing, we cast our influence into the future. We will lie as dust and merely mild disturbance in time, yet maybe echoes of our thoughts and lessons may continue to hold sway, anonymously or not, quite a while after we have disappeared from the conscious world. Article 46. Personal Journal Entry. October 1997. Trevor Frodsham, former head of Aberfrau Cliff Rescue Team. Titled, If I don't come back, send out some joy after me, because there is so little out there. In good company, banter and beer, Trevor still found joy in his achievements over the years. All his colleagues would agree with him when he said, "We did good." Mr. Frodsham's entry reads thus. Maybe this is what a modern-day Titus Oates might say, as he strides out of the shop and into the cold, mean streets of my hometown. Not exactly mean. Certainly miserable when winter rains accost you and the wind always seems to be in your face, no matter which way you are headed. There is something a bit too personal about winter rain. It gives you the distinct impression that it is intent on focusing special attention on the cold and miserable. Namely you. I know the secret of keeping warm, and it is more than being appropriately dressed. Start warm and then stay warm. Maybe it is age catching up with me, and the sudden realization, as my friend would have it, that you have less time than you think. There are days when my bones feel more fragile than usual, and the sound of the wind is no longer a challenge to engage with by changing into a pair of shorts and going for a run. Gone are the days when I was impervious to extreme heat and cold. Gone are those days when I would rush home from work, have a quick snack and direct my car towards the mountains, alone and unconcerned with anything other than beating my previous times for scrambling and climbing up sharp ridges in Snowdonia. Gone is the confidence that would find me standing voluntarily at the bottom of an extreme cliff climb, smile at my friend, dip my hand in the bag on my harness full of gymnastic chalk and ascend nervously but unafraid. My eyes still turn to the mountains, and my mind eagerly travels back in time to routes on the list yet unclimbed. Hot summer days when we eschewed the climbing helmets and climbed only in shorts, revealing once muscular tanned skin glistening with sweat. I will never again find myself climbing in a zen-like state, when all that mattered was that next move to be overcome, and to stand proud and smiling down at my friend tied to the other end of the rope. A bit fiercer than we thought. You'll enjoy it. Then in the afterglow of love for the sport, we'd sit in the Climbers Cafe in Llanberis and pile in the carbohydrates and a few pints of tea. Nothing could harm us except our own imaginations. When we sat in the pub on our third pint of beer, quoting to each other from the climbing route guidebooks, our hands would sweat involuntarily with no chalk bag to dip in. I feel myself old and pathetic, and no matter how much wisdom that has accreted around me, it counts for nothing against those routes never climbed, and those words never said when they should have been said and a person just waiting to hear them. I feel too old for love, and I feel too old for adventure, and my hands show it. My hands are my father's hands, and not those tenacious claws that never yielded to gravity, even in the most extreme of places. And I am now cowed by the winds and rains of winter, and my house is never warm enough to give me the courage to venture out. While my heart and soul scream out in the night for adventure and opportunities to show my courage, I find that I am defeated by the mundane and daily grind. Age redirects my attention to pensions and gardening and the vain hope of cooking a nice winter meal for a loved one. I long to hold on to someone with deep and desperate love outside of a hospital emergency room, and to hold the hand of someone else who knows that we do not have as much time left as we once thought we did. I long to hold the hand of someone who knows that winter cold and rain is not as searing when you are holding the hand of your loved one, when your concern is not for your own warmth, but that of another. Article 48. Trevor Frodsham, former head of Aberfrau Cliff Rescue Team. Online blog entry. January 2016. Titled, "There's no such thing as natural justice and fair play. And neither is there the guarantee of reward for our good deeds." Trevor's blog reads, "In a world where it feels that almost everyone and his mate is striving for attention, most honest good deeds go unremarked, and are inevitably lost in a maelstrom of desperate clamor of 'please look at me.' The world has noticeably moved away from the practice of the meaning of the Welsh word come winus, where the reward lies in being given the opportunity to help, which was more than enough when I was a child. An existential need for acknowledgement of the self by others is an illness that contaminates and undermines the lives of young people. The most outrageous claims have found currency, and the innocent days of the Guinness Book of Records, where highest jump, longest hair and fastest tap dancer held sway, have been replaced by outrageous conspiracy theories. Who shot Elvis? What are they hiding in Area 52? And what is the real attention span of a local councillor? The last naturally depends on where the councillor is standing relative to a buffet. Highlighting claims of your achievements is a futile gesture defeated by too many desperate souls out there, who are even more articulate in their claims and fruitless expressions. An emotional investment in advertising for the benefit of the self is a painful exercise. The truth is quite plain. No one really gives a damn about your genuine gesture if they cannot trump it with one of their own. And if there were that many good deeds out there, then why the hell is the world in such a crap state? Do not listen to friends, because I'm sorry, but your backside does look big in that, and who gives a tinker's cuss whether you know how to consume bananas without putting on weight? Further, why can't you be bothered to use spell check? Mind you, you must be able to recognize the correct spelling of the word in the first place. Social media is a broad anti-social medium in many of the experiences that have been shared with me. Alternatively, these media are indicators of increasing loneliness. It no longer seems to be enough just to be nice to each other and be pleased with that. Maybe we should not seek to be popular in the eyes of others, only in our own. I frequently reflect on an observation made by Paul Sartre in one of his plays, which I paraphrase badly. One character looks closely into the eyes of another, and says, "I look into your eyes and see myself." I'm certain that there's another specific philosophical meaning to Sartre's words. However, I choose to give it my own. Namely, I wish to become a reflection of what I want to see in your eyes. In other words, I will seek to become what would be acceptable in your eyes. Remember, there's nothing scarier and more disappointing than realizing that the beloved has his or her eyes open when you are kissing. Therefore, there is no justice if what we are seeking is irrational. By the way, I would welcome any news about who shot Elvis. Another side note. Titled, "Peace is not a natural human state. To establish and maintain peace you need a bigger pointy stick than the bad guys." It reads thus. Look to the animal kingdom for confirmations. Nature is a constant battle for food, water and shelter, always outlined in blood. Cute little bunnies get swept away and eaten by birds of prey. Amusing wildebeest are attacked by 20-foot crocodiles. Lambs are slaughtered before they have even realized that they are lambs. Another side note. Titled, "Far too many ducks regret not knowing about guns." The side note reads thus. Perspective is all. A broad knowledge of human behavior and motivation refines acuity. Learn the weaknesses you possess that others might seek to take advantage of, and know who you can trust. Politicians and celebrities are so invested in their conceit, they think they know all about guns and who wields them, but do not pay attention to that special weapon of their own manufacture. In some chosen roles it is wise to assume that everybody has a gun. No one likes a smartass until they've been shot down. Even then, it's the affection one has for an idiot upended. Another side note. A note left on the notice board by Norman Williams, Secretary to the Borthwyn Allotment Society. Winter 1987. Titled, "There's no need to worry about an escaped pig if you've got good neighbors." The side note reads thus. The company you keep tells us everything we need to know about you. It tells us about your character, your opinions, your expectations of life, and your emotional security. Good friends and neighbors allow you to float away from your responsibilities now and then. Friends and good neighbors will look after your cat, and, if you do have a cat, you probably know that the cat will already have trained them to feed it. Therefore, a cat is not a particularly good neighbor, because it will abandon you for the nearest person able to open a tin, but always return to you because it knows you are just another human fool. A good neighbor will step in when you are useless and incompetent because of life's travails. A good neighbor and friend will knock at your door and not enter without your invitation. Ironically, only vampires enter without your permission. Good neighbors will always allow you dignity and time to hide the bottle if you are battling, and will not acknowledge the smell of your secret smoking. To a good neighbor, a pig is not bacon. A good friend will never ask for anything, and if they do ask, you will give more generously than they need. A well-appreciated friend definitely does not regard your pig as bacon. A good neighbor will bring you pies, and not show it to your pig for fear of offending. A good neighbor will air his or her disgust at damaging gossip, and will never waver from the codes and shared values that binds your friendship. A good friend and neighbor will inevitably feast on your berries, happy that you will feast on theirs. A cat will only piss on them. Another side note. Francis Williams. A Letter to the Daily Death. June 23, 2015. The Daily Death, so named because it thrives on appalling front-page headlines such as, "We will miss him," for young men who have crashed their cars at excessive speeds, killed themselves and probably crippled or killed their fellow passengers. Titled, "Always leave one investment out there for blind luck." The side note reads thus. I always buy a lottery ticket. I have never won anything of life-changing substance. Yet, I hold on to an irrational belief that luck is no more than a statistical probability. An obvious problem with this belief, one that I choose to ignore, is that the odds do not lessen the more you take part. The odds remain exactly the same, 50, 60 million to 1, every time you buy a ticket. Yet, someone seems to win every now and then. Good luck to them. In most other aspects of life, the odds against an outcome being achieved are reduced every single time you smoke a cigarette, have another drink, be wanton, or drive too fast. There will be consequences. However, whether the odds are against me or not, I regard it as a safe bet, a ridiculous bet, way out there, and probably never likely to come to anything. Life frequently comes down to being in the correct spot with the correct attitude and expectation. So life is clearly nothing like a lottery ticket. Article 49. A lecture to college students by Dr. Graham Edwards. Bangor 2005. Titled, "The possession of knowledge alone is not enough to change a world. There has to be a plan." Dr. Edwards was too young to serve during the war. However, he was seconded from national service to administrative duties in Germany from 1946 to 1948. This became the bedrock of his subsequent academic studies on justifications for monstrous acts. Dr. Edwards said, "Ideas change the world for good and bad. To supplant a bad idea, you require a better idea, and you need a population hungry enough to embrace it. However, sudden change at an individual level, group, or larger tends to come from a desperate need for that change. Historical events across recent centuries have shown that people who are impatient for change are subsequently impatient for a new stability after that change. Reflect on two major events over the last 100 years and how stability was achieved in one while chaos arose from the other. In 1944 to 1945, the victorious Allies looked at the devastated state of Germany, and knew that what had returned this disaster to its people was a highly refined war machine of administration. The administration broke down each single death into calculable events, from the cost of capture, incarceration, transportation, and the cost of death per kilogram of poison Zyklon B versus carbon monoxide, killing millions and disposing of their bodies. It was a perfection in nightmarish auditing that still inspired and motivated future European leaders in the former Yugoslavia in the 1980s. The emotional response should have been to destroy that system, and prosecute all the guilty perpetrators. However, it was decided that the pragmatic solution was to employ the highly skilled and successful administrative officers and clerks of the machine of death, to rebuild the infrastructure of Germany. The system learned from mass murder would take care of a nation's people left destitute of food, hope and dignity by a wanton warfare inflicted by their leaders. Hardly a matter of transforming swords into plowshares, I would propose, merely moral ambivalence emphasized. There were many war trials of the monsters who persuaded a nation to embrace racism, yet the system of destruction was subverted by defeat to doing good. The world and its leaders knew of this successful program. It also knew that if you have a program of destruction, you need to have a program for construction. That last item brings us to the war in Iraq, where there was no plan, and the consequences of not acting on the lessons of history was a return to historical feuding and terrorism. The historical knowledge was there, and yet the knowledge was employed incorrectly without understanding. And so, knowing about human behaviors is not the same as understanding the behaviors of humans. Article 50. This is an observation allegedly made by the Reverend Harold Morgan, of Park near Dillis, on his intense dislike of village fates. Titled, As Needy as a Vendor in a Craft Fair. As if being a curate in a poor parish wasn't enough, a near-destitute priest was expected to contribute. Despite all outward indications, you realize quite quickly in a craft fair that you have not suddenly become more attractive. You are not being attended to because of your obvious looks and charm. Therefore, I have developed a tendency to stare into the near distance when walking around craft fairs. It is a skill that you have to practice, otherwise you can cause havoc in confined spaces. It is not because I don't value the quality of the product before me. It is because I do not wish to be pounced upon, and suffer the embarrassment of my own words of polite rejection of the person's wares and his or her disappointment. There is also the fact that the prices are more than I am willing to pay for something I do not wish to buy, seeing as I am only here in the first place through obligation. I have learned never to buy a pot of homemade jam without a price tag attached. I always hope that I am not ignoring friends or acquaintances at these craft fairs as I aim through the throng to reach the tea room. One of the most important life facts I have gathered to me is that unless I have somewhere to keep something, then I will not buy it. Also, I am not a collector of wibbly-wobbly stuff, mass-produced in a garden shed or on the kitchen table before the kids come home from school.